Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the D-Shift podcast. And I have been super looking forward to this interview for a while. We've had this one on the books for a bit. I'm going to talk to a person who is truly an expert in this field. So I'd like to introduce you to Charles Jamieson. He is the founder of the law firm of Charles D. Jamieson, PA. He offers over 40 years experience in marital and family law, and he is a board certified marital and family law attorney. Charlie is recognized for his expertise in high conflict divorce, parental rights, and child custody matters. He's located in West Palm Beach, Florida. Interestingly enough, I was just in West Palm Beach a couple of weeks ago, stayed at the Marriott.
Were you here during the good weather or the rain?
It was hot and humid, so it was good weather, but very hot and humid.
Welcome to Florida in the summertime.
Exactly. I'm in Texas. We've kind of got the same weather. So, and today Charlie is going to be here sharing with us some ideas about prenups and postnups, because people who know me know that I am so much in favor of couples looking at this, especially definitely for first marriages, but especially for second marriages, because we know the divorce rate is higher with that group. So I do want to say, as always, whenever we have a legal expert on here, this podcast does not provide any specific legal information or legal advice specific to your case. This is for general education and information purposes only. And listening to this podcast does not create any kind of attorney-client relationship. So I just like to get that out there right off the bat. So Charlie, thank you so much for being here today. And you are such an expert in this field. What got you into this area of the law?
When we're talking about prenuptial agreements or family law?
Just anything in general.
Prenuptial agreements, because I've been several years a family lawyer, and I finally came to the realization that we already have a prenup in place. It's called the statutes or case law that's in the state you live in or the area you live in, which will dictate what will happen to your items, your belongings, your income, your relationship with your children in the event that you don't take care of that yourself. So the question is how can you control your future or minimize the expense of a divorce? And the best way to do that is in the beginning, and hence that's why prenups existed. Prenups, when I started practicing law, were very draconian. They were basically, I keep all, you get nothing. And everyone, and you don't like it, take a walk. Now I find more and more they're becoming more of a negotiated item. What do I mean by that? I mean, almost anything and everything is negotiable in a prenup because you're dealing with divorce issues primarily. And if you're dealing with divorce issues such as division of property, what's going to be mine, what's going to be yours, what's going to be ours to divide, you're talking about alimony or rewarding a spouse for staying mostly at home or caring for the home or the children, then we're talking about things that would happen in a divorce, but we're having control over them now. It solidifies your future. In other words, you know what your future is going to be in the event these things happen. Now, that's the good thing. The bad thing is this. If you want to get people to get real about their relationships, have them start talking about money.
Yes.
What's going to happen, because that's where the rubber hits the road. And I say that, people will say, well, it's a loving document. It can be a loving document if it's negotiated in the correct way. But it also can be a draconian document. And I just find that those are not very successful. And if you're facing, and I speak from this not only as a divorce attorney, but I speak from position of being a father of two young professional females who are not married, whom I've always preached, one, don't get married until you're 30, and three, make sure you have a prenuptial agreement. Because I know that what happens is this, if there's going to be a family unit developed, someone's going to be staying at home, or going to be a primary home carer, and child carer, and at least at some sort of portion during that marriage. And for that period of time, they're going to be derailed or decrease their path of advancement in their careers, which will mean they will lose those income increments. They will also lose those retirement increments that they would ordinarily earn if they were out there in the workforce, as well as professional status and those kinds of things. That has tangible value, and that value needs to be recognized in some fashion. Now, again, it's up to two parties to decide what they're going to do. But given that, if you're facing someone who's going to say, oh no, it's all mine and I'm not going to do anything for you, then you have to be prepared to walk away.
Yeah.
That gives you the power.
Yeah.
But if you're prepared to walk away, then I think that gives you in position of saying, okay, that's all right. We can negotiate this. And that's where attorneys, I think, come in the best.
And I really, oh, sorry, I was going to say, I really like that idea of being able to walk away, because quite frankly, if you're talking about your future, your partner should, before you even get married, your partner should be interested in your best interests as well. I think that the money conversation is the most unsexy conversation you're ever going to have, but it is so critical, because if you're not on the same page, then really, do you want to go forward with that marriage in the first place?
Absolutely. And then again, what we're going to talk about alimony or spousal support or support to the other spouse. That can be done in any number of ways. It can be done in a lump sum. It can be done in what I call a stair fashion. If you're married so many years, you get so much and so much, so much. But I think everyone should be sitting down with a divorce financial planner and or a forensic accountant to say, okay, what's my stream of income going to look like? If I get divorced at 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, how much do I need to live on?
Right.
This Just like a negotiation, if you were getting divorced, because you're doing your divorce now. You're not doing it 10 years from now, you're doing it now.
Yeah. And now there are some things that cannot be included in that prenuptial agreement, I believe, and I may be wrong on this, so please correct me, but I don't think child custody or child support can be included in that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Child issues are the sole domain of the court, so the parents cannot contract the court's authority to rule on those issues. That having been said, I always like to throw in a little language about what they consider each other's potential parenting skills to be, because it's much easier to get positive language in that regard when they're feeling nice about one another than they get that kind of language when they're separated or in the middle of a divorce.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing that may not fly is a waiver of temporary alimony or spousal support, or the waiver of temporary attorney's fees. For instance, in Florida, where I practice, you can waive it in your agreement, but it's not going to bind the court, and those clauses will be invalid. That language is put in there, nevertheless, in the event that the law changes in the future, we're okay. So those are basic things that cannot be taken care of.
Okay, so I thank you. And so let's say you're interested in getting a prenup. You talk to an attorney. What should you bring to the table when you come to meet with your attorney? Like, do you both come together, or should one person go on their own first, or how do you see that logistically working out?
I take a pretty strict rule about two people coming in on the same couple to represent them. I do not do that. Inevitably, no matter what you're doing, even if you're trying to negotiate a prenup, negotiate a settlement agreement where they say, oh, we've worked it all out, inevitably you will come to a situation where you have to give advice, and it's going to be helpful to one side, it's not going to be helpful to the other. How do you do that when you're representing both people? That's the conflict of interest. Don't set yourself up as an attorney for that, and don't expect an attorney to do so. But some of the things you need to do is you need to make a full and complete financial disclosure.
Okay.
And if you don't have that, you've got to get that. Number two, it's got to be in writing. Number three, it's got to be witnessed, and by notary public, and two, at least in Florida, two witnesses, because of certain other arcane areas of the law that impact on prenups and other types of contracts dealing with real estate. You cannot give any kind of promises outside of the agreement. In other words, you can't say, "Oh, baby, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. Don't pay attention to this. You know I love you. I'm going to take care of you." There can't be any agreement outside of what's contained in the agreement. Also, you must make sure that, you must make sure that when you're writing it out, it's in plain English. We also don't want to have anything that looks like you chorus, the old fashioned or the old time. The day before the wedding, the guy shows up at the prenup, says, "You get nothing, sign it, or we're going to have a wedding tomorrow." That's coercion, because everyone's set up to be there. It's going to be all god awful embarrassment to you, and you go forward and you sign it.
Right.
That can't. In fact, we want this to be set up such that can't be any innuendo that you've in any way influenced the prenup, which means you do not pay for your fiance's attorney. You do not reimburse your fiance for her attorney. You don't select your fiance's attorney. He or she's got to do that on their own. because that way there can be no innuendo that somehow you unfairly biased her attorney representing her.
Right. So let's say, so I'm playing, let's say I have never lived with my spouse. I know that's not I know that's relatively uncommon. Most couples do live together. But even if you're living together, that doesn't mean you necessarily know your spouse's, what debts they have, or what income they have, because people can keep hidden incomes for years, decades. So I mean, really, do you just have to kind of trust that your partner is sharing full disclosure?
Most states will require, or no, or not, or you can require what we call declarations of assets, wealth, and liabilities, where you sit down and say, here's my income. And what I do generally, if I've got a high-end set of clients, I will get the documentation that says this is the income. This is what real estate I own. Here's the copies of the deeds. Here's the real estate appraisers on them, or some kind of Zillow or something that says this is the value. Here's the vehicle. Something that says, here's what I own, this is what I have. This is important because if you welsh on this, if you don't give complete financial information, that may be a potential ground of attack against the validity of your prenup. So both sides have got to do that beforehand, or they have to say, we got general knowledge. There's going to be actual general knowledge, as in the indication where you say you've been living together for a while, a couple of years, you know basically what everyone's earning, you know basically what everyone's got, and you may choose to waive. I don't like doing that. I like to make sure I've got it, because it doesn't matter. There's going to be a clause somewhere in there that says, I got more than you have. I'm always going to have more than you have. And you accept that. And again, if you have that kind of clause, then if there's some differential between the value put in and the actual value, no one's going to be able to do much with it.
What about so I know this is so interesting, and thank you for answering all these questions. I know another question I get quite often is let's say winnings, like lottery winnings or inheritances that come to one spouse after the prenup is signed, they get married. Now all of a sudden I have a windfall inheritance or lottery or an insurance payout. Is that separate, like kind of in divorce, that's considered separate property? Is that also separate property in a prenup, or how does that work?
Remember, we're dealing with a contract, so you should be delineating what happens in these kinds of circumstances. For instance, if one of the parties receives a gift, winnings, or something from a third party, not the spouse, it would be considered to be separate property. Your separate property, your separate property. Now, I would urge them not to commingle that property. In other words, put that in the same account as their spouse, or a joint account, but keep it separate and apart to further solidify their claim that this is mine. But you should have things like that already carved out in writing in your agreement, which is why it's important to have that agreement in writing. And it may be dozens of pages long. Let's not kid ourselves. We're trying to include as much as we can so that everyone knows what the future is going to look like.
Right.
So say you win. Now, you talked previously about postnuptial agreements. It may be that one spouse during the marriage starts a business. The other one has a business before the marriage. That was his business with the marital increase in value. You may have a postnuptial agreement that says he's going to keep his business, I'm going to keep mine, and we're not going to make any claim on the other forever. We can say, and they can do a rough, what I call a down and dirty business evaluation of both of them and say, okay, that's it. That's whether it's worth that. So you can sort of that's another reason why you may want to look at a postnuptial agreement, and that's another post event. And it may be, you may come into inheritance. I did a prenup once that was for a young lady and a young man who were getting married. She had been involved in a plane crash, and she had received a settlement from that plane crash. And all they wanted to do was to sandbox out or barricade out those provisions from her award from being marital property. That was the only thing in the prenup. But that was again singular, because so prenup can be focused, it can be broad, encompass all the issues. It's really up to you.
And you brought up something that's really interesting, and I'm so glad that we had a few minutes to chat before this conversation that we recorded. But you were talking about postnups. You've mentioned that a couple of times. So can you explain what a postnup is and why you might want to consider it at some point in time during your marriage?
Well, a postnuptial agreement is like a prenuptial agreement, and it does essentially the same thing. It settles all the issues that would occur in a divorce or an event that you passed away. during the course of the marriage. Basically, on passing away, just to get that really taken care of. Usually, everyone waives all rights to taking any kind of claim against your estate, but you reserve the right to give anything you want to after you sign that document to the other spouse if you choose to do so. But so let's go back to the marital portion of this. Postnuptial agreements can become important for what we call gray area marriages. Those are people who are getting older. They grew up in a generation that says we don't believe in divorce, or their religious beliefs indicate there will be no divorce, but they cannot stand living with one another. So how do we do this? We could do it with a separation agreement, but a postnuptial agreement takes care of everything. In other words, the division of property. This is what's going to happen in the event that we separate, or what happens now. They may decide they may still live together. Well, at the triggering event, whatever that may be in the agreement, then this is what's going to happen. And I've had it where people ended up with $1 million home and $1 million condo, and had enough income generating out of their retirement accounts going to the retire to each person sufficiently so they could maintain their lifestyle. Now, I did that obviously with the help of a forensic accountant and a divorce financial planner and a real estate expert. So this can sometimes be a team process, whether it's postnup or prenup, because you may need other experts to come in and help give you the valuations that you need. But that's another way you can use a postnuptial agreement.
I wanted to ask you, and again, I may be putting you on the spot, Charlie. So if this is not your area, just tell me you're not going to.
If you're not a lawyer, not put on the spot, then you're not doing your job.
Okay. I know that there is an issue. And the only reason I know this is because I went through this myself. My husband became, he passed away in 2017, but before that, he became incapacitated and was homebound due to complications from a stroke. So I know that thankfully, I wasn't in a financial situation where I was dependent on like Social Security disability or Social Security income. But I know that there is a difference on how those kind of agencies look at assets. So if you were, say, if a spouse became ill or incapacitated or was, on hospice or home care, if you had that postnup in place, does that protect the other spouse's assets from being?
It may not. And the reason I say that is because there are agencies involved, federal agencies involved, that look at the assets of both parties. In that circumstance, I would advise people to seek the services of an elder law attorney.
Okay.
Who specialize in dealing with people in those circumstances and how to shield your assets from the government's calculation of how much you can keep, because it's a very low amount.
Right.
That having been said, in some instances, individuals have gotten divorces in those circumstances because
Right.
it was that elder law planning. So that's one case. But again, that's the case where we're bringing in another area of the law to accomplish the goal of what you want, but you're also doing it in the context of a divorce case. But that's nothing you can really plan for in advance. I mean, I'd have to look at the exact circumstances before I could say definitely yes.
Sure. Sure.
Generally speaking, I'm more comfortable. I'd still be calling in an elder law attorney to give me his or her blessings on whatever we were going to be doing.
And it sounds like that's something from what you've been talking about. I mean, it sounds like you work a lot with like CDFAs or financial planners, tax accountants, maybe an elder care attorney. Do you find that team approach is essential for especially higher asset or high conflict type couples? And
higher assets and high conflict types both benefit from those. And the reason they do is because they're high assets. I'm in one little area. We just saw in your last example where I had to call in another attorney to come in. I'm going to be dealing, obviously, if I'm doing prenup, working carefully with the financial planner of both parties, because we need to make sure we have accurate information. I want accurate information. I don't want to set up a document that's going to fail. I want to make sure we've got what we need. So we're going to need a team. I want my client to feel fully secure in everything that's said and done. And the more you have more people saying yes to the plan, the more security they have that the plan's what they need and what they want.
Thank you. What do you think? We're almost out of time, too. I can't believe how fast these conversations go, especially when somebody's sharing so much wisdom and expertise. What do you think is the biggest pushback that you see people saying, oh, we don't need a prenup or a postnup? Well, what do you think stops people from doing this more readily?
The ugly conversations about money. I mean, that's what it boils down to. One of the biggest causes of divorce is monetary issues. And another reason why we don't get prenups is monetary issues. this is not going to be a pleasant conversation. It's going to be, and you're constantly saying, what's love got to do with it? I mean, that's basically love. You got the issue of love, emotions about that, but you're planning for your financial futures, and you're trying to recognize what each of you bring to the table, as well as acknowledge what each of you will be investing in the future in a planned fashion. This is no more, we're talking about divorce planning. It's not, they say, prenuptial planning. This is really divorce planning.
Right.
And you could be saving tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in divorce fees if you're a high-end couple.
And the thing is, if you spend $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 or, even more, $10,000 to get a prenup done, and then you never have to use it, it's kind of like insurance, right? It's really what it is.
It's really better than insurance because you don't have to keep paying the premium to keep it valid.
That's true, right?
I would suggest that every once in a while people have it reviewed to make sure it's up to date if there's any tweaks that need to be done. But that having been said, basically when you get the basics document put together, you're there.
Yeah. And I'm sure this is a very individual basis, but just kind of as a general global estimate, how long does it take to get that document put together? Like just ballpark.
The real issue is not the document, it's getting the asset list from the parties and ensuring that that's accurate. I'm working on one right now for a wealthy attorney, and we took a long time getting her stuff put together. And now I'm waiting for her fiance to give me his items. That's really the big issue. Why? Because we're going to need that to be as accurate as we can make it.
Right.
Because that is an important thing. We want to make sure we cut off any claims that somehow there was fraud involved in the process of declaring how much they earn for income, what their assets and what their liabilities are.
Right. So it's pretty much like anything else. The more prepared you are when you come to your attorney, the faster the process is going to be once you have those conversations.
Right, because unless this is the first prenup they've ever written, they've done a few, they know what the language has to be.
Right. Right. Wonderful. You have covered so much information, and I have learned a ton on this whole idea. And I was already in favor of pre and postnups. So I'm even more in favor of it now after having this conversation. What do you think is the most important piece of information you want people to remember when they take their earphones out or their earbuds out and go on about their busy days today?
Don't schedule your wedding until your prenup's been signed. That's the gold standard. Anything beyond that or lesser than that is you're creating risk. The closer you are to the date of marriage when you sign the document, the more risk you are at. More expensive it's going to be because some attorney's going to be putting their butt on the line.
Yeah, yeah. So start planning this. They say most couples today spend $30,000 to $50,000 planning their wedding, and it takes them over a year. So somewhere in there, find time to go see an attorney.
That's right. Again, compared to what you could be spending, think about 10 to 15 years from now, what you would be earning and how much it would cost you to get a divorce.
Yeah.
Because the divorce courts, and there's a whole nother conversation, what's wrong with our divorce courts now? They're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They
Absolutely.
don't have enough time, enough bodies, and the judges are doing their best, but there's only so many hours in the day, and you got the emergency hearings shooting off all the time. It's hard to progress anything.
Exactly.
That's the subject of another conversation.
Yes, absolutely. We'll have to have that one as well. Charlie, can you share with people if they want to find out more about your practice or they want to get in touch with you and they're in Florida and they're looking for this kind of service, what's the best way to reach you?
Probably through our website, www.cjamiesonlaw.com.
Thank you so much. And I will make sure all of that information gets in your show notes because I know you're also on all the socials as well. So I'll make sure all that information gets in there. Charlie, thank you so much for sharing this. And thank you for coming on because this is a really important topic and we haven't had anybody talk on it. So thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
It's been my pleasure and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening in to this episode of The D-Shift. I hope you found it educational. I know I did. And don't forget to tune in again next Tuesday. Thanks for listening and supporting the D-Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D-Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.